The 1513 map that shouldn't exist, how a Turkish admiral drew Antarctica before it was found. A 500-year-old map drawn by a Turkish admiral shows a coastline that no one on Earth was supposed to know existed. The map is real, it sits in a museum in Istanbul. It dates to the year 1513, and the coastline drawn at the bottom of it looks suspiciously like a piece of Antarctica, a continent that would not be officially discovered for another 3 centuries. Researchers have argued about this single document for almost 100 years and still cannot fully explain what it shows. If this map is what some scholars believe, then human history is missing a chapter that no textbook is willing to print, and the story behind how the map was found is almost as strange as the map itself. To understand the mystery, the story has to begin with a man who was both a sailor and a spy. His name was Piri Reis. He was an Ottoman admiral born in the late 1400s, raised on the salt and storms of the Mediterranean Sea. By the time he reached middle age, he had fought in dozens of sea battles and collected maps, the way other men collected coins. He had a habit no one else of his time shared. He gathered every chart he could find, no matter where it came from. Spanish maps, Portuguese maps, Arabic maps, even older charts believed to be lost. He compared them, copied them, measured them, and stitched them together into one master image of the world. He used techniques far ahead of his time, including a method that allowed him to align separate maps onto a single grid. In 1513, he finished the most famous of those creations. He drew it on a piece of gazelle skin, soft enough to roll up and carry in a leather case. Only a fragment of that map survived to modern times. That fragment was forgotten for hundreds of years in a dusty corner of a palace library, until a curator pulled it free in 1929 and felt his heart stop. What hung on that wall was a map that should not exist. So what exactly does the Piri Reis map show, and why has it haunted researchers ever since? The top half of the map shows the western coasts of Europe and northern Africa, nothing unusual there. The middle shows the Atlantic Ocean and the eastern edge of South America, drawn with surprising accuracy. For the year 1513, cities are marked. Rivers are placed in roughly the right spots. Even the curve of the Brazilian coast lines up with modern satellite images. But the bottom of the map is where the trouble begins. Below the tip of South America, the coastline continues, it bends, it stretches. It hooks around to the south in a shape that looks, to many eyes, exactly like the northern edge of Antarctica. Antarctica was not seen by human eyes until 1820. It was not mapped from the air until the 1900s. And the inland portion of its coast, hidden under more than a mile of ice, was not measured until modern seismic equipment was invented. Yet the curves on the Piri Reis map match parts of that hidden coastline so closely that even cautious scholars admit the resemblance is hard to ignore. One US Air Force cartographer once compared the map to modern surveys and reportedly wrote that the match was too detailed to be a coincidence. A 16th century admiral somehow drew terrain that no eye in his world could have seen. But could this just be a coincidence, or is there really something deeper here? Skeptics have a clean answer. They say the bottom of the map is not Antarctica at all, it is, they argue, an artistic stretching of the South American coast, common in old maps where space ran out at the edge of the parchment. Mapmakers often distorted shapes to fit the page. That theory holds up well, until other details start adding pressure. Piri Reis himself wrote notes in the margins. He said he used more than 20 older maps to make his version. He mentioned ancient sources, including charts that may have traced back to the lost library of Alexandria. Some of those notes describe lands that match nothing in Mediterranean memory. They speak of strange seas, large beasts, and warm green coasts in the deep south. If those notes are true, then someone, somewhere, sailed those waters long before the modern age. And that someone left maps behind. Piri Reis was simply the man who pulled them together onto a single skin. The accuracy of certain stretches of his work pushes the puzzle further. Some islands appear in correct positions hundreds of years before they were officially charted. Some shorelines bend exactly the way satellites show today. The Piri Reis map may be the last surviving echo of a world that history forgot how to remember. So who could possibly have mapped Antarctica before it was supposedly found? And why has no one solved this puzzle yet? Several theories try to fill the gap. Some point to ancient seafaring civilizations, perhaps the Phoenicians, perhaps the Egyptians, perhaps the Minoans, who may have sailed farther than the official record allows. Others point to advanced Chinese fleets from earlier centuries, fleets that did travel astonishing distances. A small group of researchers, mostly outside mainstream academia, argue for an unknown civilization that vanished before recorded history began. They suggest that warming and cooling cycles in Earth's climate may have once left parts of Antarctica ice-free, easier to chart, and visible from coastlines that no longer exist. None of these ideas can be proven. None of them can be cleanly disproven either. That is the strange power of the Piri Reis map. It refuses to settle into any one box. Every time a new theory is proposed, a different detail in the map pushes back against it. The mystery resists every clean answer, and that is exactly what keeps researchers awake at night. But here is where the mystery deepens. What did one American professor risk his entire career to prove about this map? His name was Charles Hapgood, a college professor who taught at Kings State in New Hampshire during the 1950s and 1960s. Hapgood became fascinated with the Piri Reis map after stumbling across it in a research book. He spent years comparing it against modern coastal surveys, satellite data, and ocean depth charts. His findings shocked even him. The shapes on the map matched real coastlines too closely to brush off. Hapgood went further. He argued that the map carried evidence of a much older civilization that may have mapped the world before the last great ice age. He sent his research to Albert Einstein, who reportedly wrote a foreword to one of Hapgood's books. That foreword cost Einstein very little, but it cost Hapgood plenty. Mainstream historians dismissed his work as fringe. His career took a quiet hit. He died in 1982. Still defending the map and still believing the answer was hidden in plain sight on a piece of gazelle skin in Istanbul. His ideas have been picked up again in recent years by a new wave of researchers who have access to tools he could only dream about, including satellite mapping software that did not exist in his lifetime. One stubborn professor risked his reputation to ask a question that scholars are only now starting to take seriously again. Modern cartographers have also added another wrinkle. They have pointed out that the kind of map projection used by Piri Reis required mathematics that did not officially exist in his region at the time. Some scholars now believe he was working from sources that contained advanced geographical calculations far older than his era. Whether those sources came from Greek, Egyptian, or even earlier traditions remains an open question. What is clear is that the work behind the map was not the work of one Ottoman sailor alone. It carried the fingerprints of dozens of forgotten hands, stretched across centuries that history has not yet bothered to fully name. The map sits behind glass in Istanbul, quiet, brown, faded at the edges. Tourists walk past it every day. Tees behind glass in Istanbul, quiet, brown, faded at the edges. Tourists walk past it every day. Few of them realize they are looking at the most uncomfortable artifact in the modern study of history. Either a forgotten people once sailed seas long before history says they could, or a 16th century admiral made an artistic guess that lined up with a real continent by sheer chance. Both options force the same uncomfortable question. What else has the past been hiding from the people who try hardest to find it? Every line drawn on that gazelle skin still waits for the next researcher willing to take it seriously. And somewhere under the ice, a coastline that was once visible waits patiently to be seen again. If forgotten history fascinates the way it should, a quick like helps these mysteries reach more curious minds. Subscribe to keep digging through the world's strangest documents, and share this with someone who still loves a good unsolved puzzle.